a picture of Evan demonstrating proper fish handling on Bidi Makaska a couple of weekends ago. Evan is also a huge fan of the St. Croix River, and he actually lives on the St. Croix up near Pine City. He also happens to be a TCTU board member. So we're very pleased to welcome Evan tonight to talk to us about the St. Croix. Let's give it up for Evan.
Thank you, Bob. Wow. How's everyone doing tonight? Yeah, what up, Zoom people? Okay, well, yeah, again, my name is Evan Griggs. I'm a local fly fishing guide, longtime local fly angler. I am best known for catching sewer salmon, especially in downtown Minneapolis below the Stone Arch Bridge. But near and dear to my heart when I'm not crawling through storm drains and mucky ponds, I am rowing my drift boat out on the St. Croix River. Raise your hand if you've ever paddled or fished on the St. Croix before. Nice. Most of you, I shouldn't even be talking then. Y'all know probably know more than me. I'm very lucky to have moved up to the, if you know the river, I live right off the Highway 70 bridge right now. I'm watching the flows come up and down with all this rain. But it's an amazing river that I'm going to tell you all my secrets about tonight. Again, if you have any questions, hang on to them, write them down. We'll get to them at the end. Happy to help. So fishing the wild and scenic St. Croix River. Let's see if the clicker works for me here. Bob, click it. There we go. The St. Croix is a geologic marvel. It was created, especially you think of the Taylor's Falls section, that was created over 1 billion years ago during the mid-continent shift, and the North American continent at that time split apart and lava oozed out of there. So there's a whole bunch of really cool basalt and granite, super ancient rocks that we get to see. We're trying to catch a muskie off of that big cliff right above Franconia here in the picture. Did not eat the bugger. But, and then about 500 million years ago, the upper region was covered by a vast inland sea. So we'll see a lot of sandstone, a lot of sand in the bedrock, especially up towards Danbury and Grantsburg and things like that. And then 10,000 years ago, good old Lake Superior, which was held back by an ice dam, burst forth, and all the water that was behind that ice dam went through the Brule River drainage and then continued cutting south through now the St. Croix Valley. And today, the Boys Brule on the South Shore and the St. Croix share the same headwaters, which is kind of cool. The Continental Divide flows right through that. So it's a really unique area. We get to see I'm a nature nerd. Fully admit it. I love nerding out on nature, rocks, bugs, birds, fish, you name it. I think this is super cool. You probably do too. Next slide, please. Sweet. Yeah, clicker's not working. It's hit or miss. It's also a cultural treasure, right? In Pine City, that was one of the first trade routes set up by European explorers. Before all that, the Dakota and the Anishinaabe tribes lived along the river. Eventually, the Anishinaabe took control of most of the river valley, especially for there was one time a lot of wild rice on there, as well as woodland caribou, elk, and bison. They liked those resources. And there was also a ton of burial mounds on the river. And the first explorer who kind of heard about the area, he was Father Hennepin. He called it the River of Graves because there was so many burial mounds and other things on it, which is a pretty cool name, I think. But after that, Sieur Duluth, which is named, Duluth is named after. was trying to find a route to get to the Mississippi to eventually the Pacific Ocean. And he heard about this sweet little route you could take to get south from the Great Lakes. And he ended up on the St. Croix River. And he eventually found stranded Father Hennepin, and there's a whole spiel of that. But this has been a route that has been a part of our history since forever, recorded history since the 1600s. Pine City, also called Chengwatana, which translates to Pine City. It's why it's called Pine City today. Was the site of one of the first trade posts in the 1800s, 1804. Nice. Logging was a big deal as well. From the 1840s, there was pretty much trapped out all the fir in the area, but there was a ton of nice pine trees. And they were like, these will never go away. And so there was a rush of people who came up, and within a few decades of pretty intense milling, all the white pines were gone for much of the area. But the St. Croix River was the main chute that they would send all these millions and millions of board feet of lumber down. There were dudes called river pigs who'd stand on these logs with pikes and spikes in their shoes, and they'd pull and push these things around down the river. This is a picture of one of the more famous log jams that would always happen at the Dalles in St. Croix Falls. This one took 2 months with dynamite and steamboats to pull apart. It's crazy. There's a really cool news article from one of the tribunes of the Times. Someone from out east came to visit the riverway in the 1800s, and he said it looked like a line of redcoats along the shores. It looked like the Queen of England was coming with how many red shirts were along the river banks, and he was talking about all the buffalo plaid of the lumberjacks working the river. After all the pines were cleared out, agriculture moved in, started with wheat, several other crops. Some things worked really well. The soil depleted pretty quickly with the lack of vegetation to hold in the topsoil, which also attributed to a lot of sedimentation of the river that we still see today. Especially over in Wisconsin, they switched to dairy farming. So if you all go to the Burnett Creamery just outside of Grantsburg, they have delicious smoked cheese sticks worth the $7. They're incredible. I'm gonna go pick some up later. But after that, settlers stayed in the area for farming, and we're kind of living here today. Next slide. Then some really cool, smart people in 1968 were like, whoa, this river needs to be protected. And there was this breaking of the times legislation called the Wild and Scenic River Act in 68, and the St. Croix and the Namakagon rivers were among the first 8 rivers in the nation to be designated wild and scenic. And so today, the national parks own about a 1/4 mile of river, pretty much all the way from the headwaters all the way to the boom site just north of Stillwater. On either side of that, there's also state land, state forest that adds to that habitat buffer. Essentially, the Wild and Scenic Act was put in place to protect the free-flowing state of rivers. So we can't build any new dams. Once old dams lose their efficiency or what have you, they get to be removed and the river gets to be restored, things like that. And so now from the headwaters at Gordon Dam, which are kind of in the middle of nowhere, kind of by Dairyland, Wisconsin, to the Stillwater site, boom site, over 250 miles of river are protected, renaturalized, and we get to enjoy them all today. It's a backyard national park. It's incredible. There are several, because it's federally protected, to be a commercial fishing guide on it, myself and a few others who get to work on this river, we all need to have a commercial use authorization from the National Park Service. and the feds mandate certain levels of good requirements and all sorts of reporting and things that we have to do to ensure that we're not taking advantage of the resource, but helping it out or representing it correctly. There's only 50 permits on the river that are available for commercial use. So it's pretty awesome that we get to be one of those. Go for it. Nice. So the St. Croix has been a super popular fishing destination since the early 1900s. The first fishing guide family out there was the Hustons. Bill Huston was the son's name, and it was a father and son. And they started a camp called, at that time it was Huston's Fishing Lodge. Today it's still in operation, called the Grantsburg Associates. Over a number of years, it moved from just north of Taylor's Falls, and it moved way upriver north of Grantsburg to what is now Nelson's Landing or Einar's Landing. And in the 40s, this cool guy, Einar Nelson, who was a Danbury, Wisconsin native, and one of Bill Huston's guides, took over the operation, turned it to Einar's St. Croix fishing camp, and he ran it until the 50s, until it became the Grantsburg Associates and moved to a nearby lake. But these guys, especially Bill Huston, I'm reading a book right now that basically summarizes Bill kept a fishing log every single trip he took on the river from 1910 to 1930. What fly was working, what client he had, where they were from, the number of fish they caught or didn't catch. And it's just fascinating history to read. By the 20s, 1910, at that time it was a very popular tradition. We were going to have an epic shore lunch. Every fish we get is going to get fried in batter. And by mid 1920s, late 1920s, he said, we're not catching as many fish as we did 10 years ago anymore. We shouldn't be keeping as many fish as we do. So it's pretty interesting to see that kind of changing. Einar implemented a tradition called the honor roll. So any client that caught a fish over 18 inches was put onto this short list of people catching trophy bass. And that honor roll is still going on out there today. Very cool. Nice. So the St. Croix River as a whole is home to more than 60 species of fish. That's including walleye, that's including sturgeon, muskies, northern pike, whole bunches of native sucker species, smallmouth bass, panfish. It's a really vibrant aquatic ecosystem. Because of the protection of the national parks, the vast majority of the banks for all 200 plus miles are completely forested, rolling hills in the lower valley with high rock bluffs. The upper river, it's very much more pine stands, tall grasses, wildflowers, things like that. Most of the islands that we see today on the river were actually created by logs from the 1800s getting stuck in the sediment. They would keep collecting sediment and those plants would take root over top of them. Pre-logging days, there's records of what was the river channels, just big granite rocks the whole way down, no sand, no muck or anything. So today we still see a lot of that sand and topsoil that washed in, still happening. Along the way, the St. Croix River has hundreds of free first come, first served campsites. You can either paddle up to them. Some of them you can drive or hike to, but it's kind of like a 200-mile long boundary waters. It's all wilderness the whole way. It's incredible. There are only a few spots where there are some grandfathered in cabins. In the river I routinely work, about 40 miles of it, there's only 5 cabins on it. They're small, they can't be remodeled, enlarged, moved, anything like that. So it's a really special thing to have only an hour from the metro here. We also see a ton of eagles, ospreys. It's a migration route for a lot of different waterfowl, sandhill cranes. They look like Jurassic Park birds. They're awesome. It's a really neat ecosystem all winter long because it was so warm. The river didn't freeze behind my house, and we had a few pairs of giant swans back there. My little 3-year-old, every day after school, we had to walk down to the river to go say hi to her swans. So it's just a magical ecosystem. Lately, I've been seeing way more river otters. That's pretty fun. Tons of muskrats, lots of coyotes. The last 5 years I think I've seen about 30 black bears as well. 2 summers ago, I was grilling some smash burgers on the griddle on a sandbar, and my clients were in front of me, and they were saying, "Oh, Evan, there's a bear." I thought they were just joshing me. It's like, whatever, you guys. And then I look over my shoulder, coming out of the grass was a little 1-year-old black bear. Get out of here! And he went running, but mini Boundary Waters, an hour from home. We got black bears walking right up to us. But it's a magical place. Our favorite, we're here about fishing though. Let's get to the brass tacks, people. Smallmouth bass is what this river is really known for. They're native to the watershed. There's still tons of boulders, huge boulder gardens along the riverway, tons and tons of log jams. They hang out in all those classic, I would even say trout. I read for bass a lot like big brown trout holding water as well. Really good number of fish, especially 11 to 13 inchers. Lots of fish, we'll see 14 to 18. And there's a decent number of 19 to 20 plus inch fish. Our biggest last year was a 21 incher. That was pretty awesome. Ideal water temps for these guys are 65 to 75. It does get a little warmer than that in the Croix, but thankfully there is a ton of groundwater, spring creeks that flow in off of the bluffs and keep it really nice and cold and clear pretty much all season long. They love anything with rubber legs, anything that makes a splash or a bubble. They are super fun. These fish are pretty unique in this river because there are no dams limiting their migration. A lot of these fish will overwinter in the flowage above the Taylor's Falls Dam. And then in the spring, every year with high water, they'll swim up to Grantsburg, Danbury, which is about 60 miles at the highest end. And they do that every single year. It's crazy. In contrast, a lot of the Mississippi River bass at Monticello might move 6 miles in a year. So these fish move a ton, which is cool to see their wild behavior. Nice. Northern pike. This is a big one. We probably know northern pike is hammer handles, fly stealers. We got a ton of those in the river. This is an exception. This was a 41-inch pike. The Taylor's Fall canoe landing was like right over here. And right when we landed this fish, there was a school group getting onto the water, and all these kids started screaming at the sight of this giant fish that was probably going to eat their toes. It was sweet, traumatizing them. It was awesome. But these guys, very similar. If you've ever fished for them before, they were sitting where an alligator might like to sit. Weedy backwaters, ambushy spots. They sit where the frogs sit. Lots of smaller hammer handle fish than that 14 to 20 inch range. We do see a good number, especially early season or late season, 20 to 30 inch fish with some good regularity. If you work hard enough and dedicate enough casting power, you can find some of these really big ones in the 30 plus 40 inch range. They like cold water. If it gets much above 70 degrees, they tend to go into the pools and become inactive. But they are way cooler than muskies in a lot of my opinion because they like to eat stuff. They will eat anything. If it's shiny, they eat it. They're coming after. It's just like me. If it's got frosting or melted cheese on it, I'm eating that thing, right? That's delicious. It's opportunity. So these fish are very opportunistic feeders, and a blast on a fly rod. And then the big dogs, the muskies. These guys are native to the watershed. There has in previous years been some stocking efforts done by the Wisconsin DNR and Minnesota. For the most part now, they're all wild giant fish. They hang out in the log jams, shallow back channels, creek mouths, kind of anywhere. Their main prey are the suckers of the rivers. So anywhere you find suckers, you're going to find these guys not far behind. They even will hang out in the really fast water, pools below fast water. They're terrifying. They're really cool. Decent population throughout the river. The upper river has a better population. They kind of thin out lower down, but their sizes get bigger. Many fish in the 20 to 30 inch range, upper 30s. If you get a fish closer over 50, that is a trophy mark in the St. Croix. Very cool. They also like cold water. Don't fish them if water's over 80 degrees. And they want anything Chihuahua sized plus. They love big, heavy, flashy stuff. You're throwing 12 weights to 14 weights. It's crazy. But you want to see a whole chicken get eaten in one bite. This is the way to do it. Pretty cool. Okay, you ready? We're gonna go on a 200-mile adventure together. Put on your life jackets, grab your paddles. So we're gonna start up at the headwaters, which is way up above Minong there, coming out of the Gordon Dam, and we're gonna go for 170 miles to right above Stillwater here. There's the national park kind of breaks it into 6 different sections. We're gonna kind of follow along with them. And I'll teach you about how each river section is different and how some of the fishing is cool in each one. Here we go. So the wild section, this one's super cool, right out of the Gordon Dam. Flows for approximately 25 miles to the Riverside Landing, which is just outside of Danbury. This section is really small water, very dependent on rain flow, snow melt, things like that. We only really get to float this section very early in the season. We need water levels 1,500 cubic feet per second or more to make it through in a boat without hiking for most of the way. This section is characterized by having a ton of class 1 rapids and nice plunge pools below each one. Coppermine Dam is kind of a famous thing right up here. There was no copper mine on the river, but nearby there was, so they just named it after the closest thing. But they left the remnants of this dam, and it makes a really fun like class 2 chute of water, big wave of water that you can try to run with your boat. But otherwise, all of this is just all wilderness. All of these campsites have, some of these launches have campsites. There's a few campsites that are boat only. They have picnic tables, campfiring, and a pit toilet. That's about it. Everything for tons of miles this way, tons of miles this way is all state forest. There is nothing up there. Very cool. Hard to fish when in low water. You'll be scraping we'll be scraping boats through there in another week or two once water drops. So we got a very short window. A lot of our fish, especially from the lower Namakagon, like to swim up here to spawn though in that good rocky fast water. Next section, yeah. Smallies and walleyes, stuff like that too. Yep. Our next one, the upper section from Riverside all the way to Sand Creek. In this section, some big things to note would be the city of Danbury, or town of Danbury. This is all St. Croix State Park. This is the 2nd largest state park in the state. And this section here, from Riverside all the way through is a lot of sand and very calm, gentle currents. Lots of big log jams that hold those larger predatory fish. There are some clusters of boulders or boulder garden rapids, especially right above Thayer's. That one's kind of nasty. You have to stay to a certain side to get through that one. But for the most part, it's all very gentle water through here. People do like, especially if you're targeting muskies or big pike, you're going to be targeting all these little tributaries that flow in, Clam River, Lower Tamarack, things like that. Those are the main really cool pieces of habitat that fish will latch on to. This section is runnable pretty much at any water level and throughout the season as well. Very easy water to read. Yeah. This is the fun stuff now. So after Sand Creek, the Kettle River flows in right here. We're seeing the end of St. Croix State Park, so we're getting past Hinckley now. And we're gonna come up on Grantsburg down here. And this is probably my favorite 15 miles of river in the world, probably. I love this stuff. The most famous piece of water and most technical boating water is this Kettle River Slough right here. So the river splits at head of the Rapids Landing, which is towards the end of the St. Croix State Park. This is Nelson's Landing, that dude who was pulling that boat. That's where he used to have his fish camp right there. And so everything from pretty much Nelson's or head of the Rapids to just above Soderbeck Landing is like continuous class 1 or 2 rapids. Beautiful big boulder gardens, rocks everywhere. It is like quintessential smallie water. It's very fun to fish. You have to be careful. Right here, they mark it with a ledge. This is a class, like put it as a class 2. It's about a foot drop in the river. If you go through the middle, you get stuck on it. So you got to try to sneak through on the sides at certain water levels. But everything after that, it starts to widen and slow at that point. And then it's a nice easy paddle all the way to Soderbeck from there. After Soderbeck as well, there are some little rapids that spread out. And there are it's almost like big lakes in between the rapids that you got to push through. But this is like ground zero for smallmouth fishing on the St. Croix, this 15 miles of river here. I wouldn't say it gets as much pressure as the Mississippi does, but you will see lots of other kayakers, other anglers out there rowing drift boats or things like that. Very beautiful water though. Yeah, next one.
You mentioned the Kettle River Slough.
Yep.
And what fish are in that?
Same, everything that's in the Croix in the slough. It's a funny term for a slough, but it makes an oval around a really long island. You have to put in at Nelson's and take out at Soderbeck. It's an 8-mile run, but the St. Croix or the Kettle runs in at the end of that. And anything that's in either of those rivers is in there. So
that part more like St. Croix and less like the Kettle.
It's kind of like both. It's very narrow. It's really relatively a narrow channel with some bigger rapids kind of mixed in there, a few small side channels through it. That little section, if we go back one, this little section here is more like you're paddling on like the upper Chippewa or the upper Namakagon. It's really cool. It's only kind of doable if flows are above 1100 CFS. I've done it below that and I've had to walk most of it. It's not cool. But above that, this time of season, that's really fun water. You get a lot of cool fish kind of migrating through that zone. Yeah, it's a different feel than some of the big lakes that we end up on lower down. Avoid south winds, yes. We'll get into that more. All right, my house is up at the top of the screen. It's blocked by the lamp shadow, but that's Highway 70 there. If you're driving over, wave as you're going by. This is the section this is kind of my office. I work this the most. From Highway 70 to Stevens Creek is kind of like cool rapids again with big lakes. But now we're going to start seeing some really big island chains with more sand starting to come in. And in this section also, you'll see remnants of from the logging days. old wing dams where some sorry suckers got paid like a penny a day to pile logs into the mud and then stack rocks in between the logs. But when in these slower water sections, they use these wing dams to pinch the river channel and speed up the current flow so the logs wouldn't get stuck in the mud. A lot of those have been taken out or washed away by flooding over time, but there are still a few in this section, and they make really cool fishing spots because there's huge eddies behind them. But as we get past, especially Rush City Ferry, which historically was a wire cable across with a wooden cart, you'd drive your Model T on there and they'd pull you across. There's most of the river landings on the river today are prior ferry crossings or other homestead sites, things like that. They tried not to build new after the wild and scenic designation. They just repurposed what was already there. But once you get past Rush City, you're going to start seeing wider stream channel, more sand dunes under the water with clumps of big boulder gardens here and there. One of my mentors, Bob Bickford, loves this lower section down here, and he will fish these ever-changing, he's got this really poetic stuff about these ever-changing dunes under the water, and you have to go find these random and forever changing channels to find the fish. It's a really cool section because it's really long. It doesn't get a lot of pressure. And the fish are more spread out often, but when you do find them, they'll be in schools in this area. So you get multiple shots on them. With the sand, anywhere there is a rock or a clump of logs, that's probably going to be a good bet for you. And that sort of pattern continues. This is the one east-west jog the river does. It's mostly, mostly south course. So this is your one east-west jog, and then we turn down into Nevers Dam, Wild River State Park, probably some areas you've hiked before or gone skiing at over here. And then we get to Taylor's Falls. Taylor's Falls is the last hydroelectric dam on the riverway. They're probably going to keep it because that's the only barrier for silver carp on the riverway. So I don't think that will go away anytime soon. But this little flowage down here is where many smallmouth will overwinter. And there's actually a special catch and release only fishing season for smallmouth bass above Taylor's Falls Dam, because they were finding in the early 30s, 40s, 50s, people would go there and just rail them in. They'd take home all these trophy smallies. So now they have a catch and release season there to protect those overwintering fish. After this turn here, our big river bluffs start to come in that we know and love closer, especially Taylor's Falls and down. Very easy water to fish and to paddle, and it is good at any water flow at all as well too. Slide. Thank you. Then the lower section. I call the lower section everything from Taylor's Falls all the way down to the boom site. It's all fairly similar stream channel structure. You're going to see huge river bluffs, lots of basalt right in, or granite type stuff right in Taylor's Falls. And as you continue down, it turns more into limestone and things like that. But huge river bluffs on each side. And many floodplain sloughs and lakes through here as well. One of my favorite clients of all time, Lucy and Stan, fished this little slough here, and they've been fishing this for, I don't know, since probably the 80s. But they say it's a really short window, but you can get in there with a little canoe or a little 2-horse John boat and fish all these backwaters that hold all sorts of cool fish, bass and whatever, big pike too. River channels really wide, very slow. You might see a big steamboat coming down from Taylor's Falls. That's always kind of cool. And it loses current as you get down towards the boom site. So you have to be really mindful of your wind direction and how far you're going, especially if you're paddling or something like that. You can get stuck out there on really big floats for sure. But beautiful river channel. We lose a lot of rock bottom in this area. It's mostly sand, mostly some areas even kind of mucky. We'll have more gravel, pebble kind of pea gravel bottoms in some of the bends. We're really keying in on log jams in this area more than anything. The banks are also pretty undercut by those log jams as well. So you don't have to be too far away from the bank, but if you can cast into those log jams, there's always fish hiding under those in any water level. Nice. Perfect. All right, so that was 200 miles. Woo! Pretty cool. We floated past some cool tributaries on our way down though. The Namakogan is the largest tributary. It's also part of the wild and scenic designated. It's about 100 miles long. Everything, I think this is really cool. Everything above Hayward, all the way up to Cable and beyond is all trout water. And there are a few warm water species, but it's really notable for brown trout fishing up there. Then everything below Hayward is all bass, pike, muskie, warm water fishing. So if you want a cool weekend, you can bring your 3 weights for brownies and brookies above town, and then bring your 12 weights for muskies the next day. Very cool, small winding stream channel, very tall pines. It's a really pretty river. The Kettle and the Snake are the 2 largest tribs on the Minnesota side. They parallel each other. They actually make an L shape for whatever reason. The Kettle is a state designated wild and scenic river, so you can't build within 300 feet of the riverbanks there. So it's an even smaller version of the boundary waters pretty much. There's some epic whitewater rafting through Banning State Park. If you've never hiked there or paddled there, check it out. It's really cool. Goes through this canyon of sandstone, and there's some really fun class 2 to 4 rapids through there. The Snake is quite a bit more mellow. It's a series of class 1 and 1 rapids pretty much the whole way, 80 miles or so. As it hooks into the L and heads into Pine City, it'll go through Pokegama Lake, and then it'll go into town and go through Cross Lake, and then there's a ledge dam at the base of Cross Lake, and they built a ledge dam because there are river sturgeon or lake sturgeon that will swim up there in the spring to spawn. I was just there the other week and I got to see a couple 4-footers going over these little ledges to try to get up into the lake. They do also stock muskies into Cross Lake, and they kind of move around through the system as well. And then another kind of sneaky one is the Apple River, just north of Hudson. And that's about 80 miles. There are a couple trout tributaries that go in there, but it's really cool warm water fishing as well. Below Somerset, you can even find some big largemouth bass because it goes through a few reservoirs in there. So you can get smallies, walleyes, largemouth, kind of a catch-all. Pretty cool system. So these are all warm water tribs for the most part. Slide. Oh, they can't. Technical difficulties. Yep, no problem. Wow. Any questions at all? Nice. Okay, we're leaving warm water land then. We're going to go into the trout stuff. How many of you have fished for trout long? Yeah, okay, we're holding. Oh, really? Well, we need a green screen, you know, like the Weather Channel. And here you have the hopper dropper rig. And say again, sorry? Yeah, we will in a sec here. From the beginning. 1 billion years.
Yeah, we're gonna have a
1
do-over.
billion years ago. There we go. We can go back a couple slides. There we go. Nice. So highlighted in red here is the Namakagon and the St. Croix, and all those blue lines are designated trout waters, which is super duper cool. We have basically this line here is the St. Croix watershed, and as well on this side it has a much wider thing on the Minnesota side. Most of these streams are super duper small and full of, well, not necessarily full, but they got a bunch of native brook trout in them. Yeah, it's awesome. They're really hard to fish. They're much different than driftless streams, especially kind of above, anything above St. Croix Falls. We'll get a bunch of alders and things that grow over the stream channel. So you got to bring like your 2-foot one weight to try to cast underneath all that stuff. The bottom, especially on the Wisconsin side, is a lot more sandy, mucky. That has to do with that glacial lake that used to be in the area. There's not as many trout per mile on many of these streams, but especially the brown trout that are in these ones can get up to impressive sizes. The brook trout average about, they top out at about, not very big, maybe 8-9 inches. There are a few streams that get some bigger ones. Most of them, because they are such small systems, if you find a 4 or 5 incher, that's like a average adult size brook trout in these systems. Yeah, let's go for it. Here we go. I'll show you some cool ones. So this whole region here is 2,000 acres of public land. It's a Wisconsin AMA. It's called the Croix River Fishery Area. And this is kind of just east of Siren a little bit. And what we're looking at here is the North Fork of the Croix River that eventually dumps into Clam Lake. Trout Unlimited and the Wisconsin DNR have done several habitat restoration projects on this area. They've made ledge pools, they've cut back alder, things like that to try to make access a little easier and provide some deeper overwintering holes. And they've, the last survey found about 1,000 fish per mile in the north branch of the Clam. There's also brook trout in some of the upper reaches, but they, in recent surveys, have not been doing as well as the browns, so they're trying to figure that out. And they'll probably be doing any future habitat work. We'll be adding more wood and brush in the actual stream channel. They found that brookies prefer some of that deeper, narrower water with more wood in it versus the big rocks and ledge rock falls things that the browns prefer. So they are putting brookies at the forefront here, which is good. A couple notable tribs of this one, especially this. This is Sand Creek. That's mostly brown trout. They average about 7 inches in that one. The biggest that they surveyed in the Clam was up to 20 inches and about 3 or 4 pounds. They also found that the biggest browns, because it's colder water at the headwaters here, would spend summer up in the upper river, and then they would radio shock in the late fall or early spring, and they would find them all the way over here by the Clam Reservoir. They would eat minnows or whatever, a little bit warmer water there, and then in the spring they go back up here to eat bugs and brook trout. It's awesome. But really cool fishery. It has a lot of alders, so it is best to fish in the winter, early spring before all that vegetation grows in. They have bigger, it's a little bit warmer water, so you can use bigger fly patterns. They have bigger stone flies in there and things like that. So it's a really cool fishery. They've done some awesome, really unique habitat work on it. There are some big fish. Awesome. And this one is in our backyard, Browns Creek, just outside of Stillwater, Minnesota here. This is a Trout in the Classroom group from Stillwater High School with the DNR doing an electrofishing survey. They found a ton of brown trout, and the DNR also stocks rainbow trout in there. And it's a really neat, kind of a super small stream channel. And it's a backwards trout stream. The headwaters start very warm up in a marsh. And as it cuts through the bedrock layers and drops down into the river valley, it picks up more groundwater, cold, clean groundwater. So you actually get better trout fishing near the mouth than you do at the headwaters. This stream, also a really good one to fish early season before all the vegetation grows in. But they are doing a huge habitat project. They're doing, I believe, almost a mile of water from McCusick Road to Neal Avenue through Browns Creek Park, connecting up to, I think that's Oak Grove or Oak Glen Golf Course there, where we've TUs and DNRs restored a section through that. But all that publicly accessible water will be restored here, re-meandering the stream, putting in native vegetation, cool stuff like that. That's happening this summer, so go check it out. You can drive right up. It's in our backyard. This is a stream that deserves more spotlight for how close it is. They last surveyed it in 2018 in the golf course. They found several browns over 18 inches and pushing 3 pounds in there too. So they're eating all the golf balls that are going off the green. But it's a very cool, very close trout stream that we should all be checking out as well, just as much as Eagle Creek or the Vermilion, I think. But there's also a ton of really cool brook trout streams with fish that they believe have been there since the last ice age, especially from Franconia, kind of around Franconia and Taylor's Falls. And these streams are itty bitty. They only happen when there's a good amount of snow melt or rain. And they're all unnamed. You can look in the DNR book and it's just a row of streams, probably like 10 of them, unnamed. And I read this cool article. The DNR fishery people were trying to find one of these creeks to go sample. They ended up on the wrong one, but they still found trout in it. And they found this new stream that was also unnamed. So these little streams have really kind of had a harder time holding on to these brook trout populations because they're very shallow and they lack deep pools that brook trout like to hold in. So that's why they're only really successful when we have high water runoff years. But these fish, you know, it might be a 4-year-old brook trout at 4 inches long. It's like a very miniaturized ecosystem. But most of that land is all state scientific and natural area. It's all state forest or national park property. So you can definitely hike in there early season, at least look at them. That's like a fish that has been there since the glaciers. That is super duper cool. And you can also bring a 2-weight if you want. And your ittiest bittiest midge flies probably, and try to catch one of those things. Really cool fisheries in there. And those would be the coolest one I would say would be that is the easiest to access would be I forget the name of it. I think it's Mill Stream coming right through St Croix Marine. There's a waterfall there. I remember I was there in the fall and there was a couple of little 4-inch brook trout on a red just doing their thing. It was super cool to see. You know, you hear the highway going, you can go get ice cream on the top of the hill. It's great. So it's all for all intensive purposes, a national park urban trout stream. It's incredible. We should be exploring those streams as well. So next slide. Okay, here we go. If you're going to be fishing the Croix, you got to have a 7 to 8 weight fly rod. 9 feet is best. Fast action. Favorite flies, anything that looks like a shiny minnow, Murdich minnow. Take pictures of this, please. This is all gold here. But Murdich minnows, tequilas. I used to work in a fly shop. People would come in and ask for tequila. I knew what they meant. They were looking for the crayfish fly. Anything that has a yellow rubber leg will crush out there. And the Dahlberg diver, Larry Dahlberg was a at one point an owner of the Grantsburg Associates, and he invented a deer hair diving fly just for the St. Croix bass that looks like a frog. And it's very effective out there. For our pike, you can use a 7 weight. If you want to go for the really big ones, you're going to be looking at a 9, 10, 11 weights. Floating or intermediate line works, but you got to have some wire tippet on the end of there. Otherwise, you are giving away your flies. Got to pay the tax man. Flies, it's blank because they will eat anything. They will literally eat anything. Muskies, you're going to be at least 11 weight plus on rod size. One of the guides I know out there uses 15 or 16 weight rods just because you are loading flies that feel like 2 wet socks on the end of your line. It is brutal, brutally fun. Again, very short leaders, very strong wire leader on the end of there. Anything that's, we call it a Buford style, so it's kind of reverse tied deer hair with different colors and feathers and flash. Sometimes you'll see a big tuft of fur right behind the hook eye, and that acts like a snow plow to turn the fly as you strip it in. And those fish come in when it's in between strips and it's changed directions. They'll come up and T-bone it on you. But those are, we are out of driftless trout land. We are throwing really big equipment for these fish on the St. Croix. Here we go. This fish was up on the Snake River. May to July is a great time to get into those upper reaches of the river where we need good water flows, or some of those tributaries, Snake Kettle, things like that. The fish flows are up. Fish are usually along the banks or in some sort of back channel trying to get out of the fast current. It's been a long, cold winter at this point, so they will eat frogs if they're out early. So far this year, it's been a great frog year, and they're eating poppers already. Big minnows, big crayfish at this time. They're either post-spawn, pre-spawn. They're fattening it up for that intense activity of spawning. As after you get into June, our flows tend to start dropping, and the last couple of years we've had scary low water up there, but come July and September, our flows will kind of drop and level out. Fish will kind of spread out off of the banks. We'll have to start looking for them after a little bit deeper structure, logs or big rock piles out in the mid-channel. They'll be keying in still on pretty much anything top water, smaller minnow patterns once the water drops. Can be a little more technical, especially once that water is really low and clear. They can get a little spooky, so you got to lengthen your leaders sometimes. Then into the fall, September can be really good for big bass again, as they're making that downward migration back to Taylor's Falls. Those big fish need to fatten up for winter. So often as we're muskie fishing, we will probably catch a big 20-inch bass at some point of the day that eats a giant muskie fly. It's a great time. As those water temps drop, they do become pretty lethargic in terms of bass, but pike and muskies pick up. That is the go time. October into November is my favorite time for the muskies. They're where they need to be, and they're usually hungry because winter's coming. For the best strategies, the St. Croix is very water flow dependent. So the higher the water, we need to be casting into near shore objects, log jams, big eddies right off the bank. Bass don't mind current. You can catch them in fast water, but they're bass. They're not like a trout. They want to be sitting where they can be fat and happy and eating frogs that land in the water. So fish areas that that have a little break in the current and high flows. You can start, I like to start at the surface. If you're not hitting them on poppers, go to a neutrally buoyant bait fish pattern or something. If they're not hitting those, then dredge the bottom with a big leech or a big crayfish or something like that if they're feeling cold. Normal water levels, I would say, are around 900 to 1500. You can start along shore. If they're not biting along shore, then just find deeper stuff, mid-river channel stuff, rock clumps, sunken logs, things like that. Start at the top with your flies and work your way down to find where they're feeling comfortable or active. In low water, we've seen this a lot the last couple of years, 600 to 900. Gets a little bony for most boats out there. We will be hitting and rubbing bottom in a lot of spots. Upper river, Kettle River Slough is not runnable at these flows at all. So at this point, you're looking for those deep water spots where they can find some overhead cover. If a fish are lazy and paranoid, just like us, so if you can't be protected from above by a log or something like that, an overcut bank or undercut bank, you're going to go deep and use water depth as your cover. So usually lengthen your leaders, smaller presentations at that time too. Nice. Here's all the mistakes I've made in my decade of rowing this river. A little more than that now. Mike said number one here already, beware the south wind on the St. Croix. Holy cow. Because the majority of this river flows north to south, you get a strong north wind on a big lake section. You will have 2-3 foot rolling waves that you got to try to paddle through or row through or whatever, and it is not fun at all. So ideally, if you get anything but a south wind, you can float this river with relative ease. Even if it's a south wind, if it's much above 12 miles an hour sustained, I would suggest floating elsewhere, because you're going to be lifting weights all day essentially. Prepare for the bugs, especially this spring. The mosquitoes are thick. They are terrible up there right now. And they will continue to be so until probably mid-June, late June. Depends how much rain we get between now and then. I cannot sing the praises enough of these sun hoodies with the bug repellent stuff built into them. They're probably $10 more than the other kind of hoodies or other kind of shirts, but they will save your life out there from the bugs, biting flies, things like that. You can spray bug spray on yourself, but don't do it around your fishing gear because it can eat up your fly line and leaders, and then it can repel. Fish don't like the smell of it either. So if you get it on your flies or something, you're SOL. Watch out for bears. I mentioned that earlier. I had a little guy sneak up behind me. Last year I saw 10. The year before that was another 10 to 15 bears. So there's a lot of them up there now. And the DNR nor the national parks have any sort of signage about it. So I'm just letting you know, it's not scary. Just be cautious when you're cooking burgers or something. And then expect the unexpected on this river. It is totally wild up here. Weather changes quick. Flows can drop really quick. Wind direction can change really quick. So be prepared for those sorts of things and have escape routes planned if you need it. If I'm doing a float, I like to have an uh-oh out somewhere in the middle there, just in case things get a little crazy. In terms of fishing too, these fish are, they're not as regular as a Mississippi bass. These guys tend to have about a 3 to 4 day pattern, maybe up to a week-long pattern, and then they will, for whatever reason, totally switch what they like to do. One day or 1 week, they will be on rocks eating frogs, and the next day they will be in 10 feet of water by logs eating the smallest leech pattern you got. So if something isn't working, just try different fishing angles, fishing depths, things like that, to see what these fish are doing, because they can change quick too. This is a fantastic organization, Wild Rivers Conservancy. They're the watershed management org and partner group to the national parks. They do amazing stuff with studying freshwater mussels and lake sturgeon, and a number of native plants and things. They do land acquisition or help other groups with land acquisition. Just last year, they added, I think, another 700 acres to state forest in the Rush City area. They help with stream habitat work and things like that as well. They also do a ton of advocacy work. There's some CAFOs looking to enter the Trade River area. They've been really lobbying against those pretty heavy, which is awesome. Those aren't great for watersheds, but this is a fantastic group. Definitely check them out if you are interested in supporting that watershed. And this is us. If I've convinced you this sounds cool, I'd love to share it with you. Otherwise, if you want to try it on your own, please, at any time, feel free to give me a call or an email. Always love to share this river and help people out on this river. It is, I cannot stress enough how lucky we are to have a 200-mile long national park in our backyard. It is my favorite river in the world. So I'd love to take you fishing on it, or help you plan your own adventures out there. But otherwise, that's all I've got, and I'd love to get into questions.
All right. Thank you, Evan. We will. Thank you. We will take questions from the in-person audience first. You folks who are on Zoom, feel free to put your questions in the chat. I bought Evan a pizza, so he has to stay here as long as the questions last. So right here. And if you could wait for the mic so that people on Zoom can hear your question.
So you listed some flowage numbers. What gauges do you tend to look at the most?
Great question. I typically watch the Danbury USGS gauge for everything above Taylor's Falls, and then there is another gauge at Taylor's Falls. If the river reads much above 2000 CFS at Danbury, it's a no-go. If it's below 700 or 600 CFS, you might be rubbing bottom in quite a few areas. Anything between there is very manageable. Yeah, yeah, but Danbury's a good one.
Okay, Paul.
On those middle stretches, on an average flow situation, how many miles do you float in a day?
Sure. I'm a lazy rower. I like to work all the rocks I can in a mile as possible. I feel really comfortable for an 8-hour day doing 5 miles. And if that way a south wind decides to kick up or something, I'm not stuck rowing 15 and the last 7 of it into a 20-mile headwind. I would say for a 4-hour float, look between around 3 miles. For an 8-hour day, depends on how you're rowing or paddling. If you want to go longer, do 5 to 7 for a comfortable fishing day, I would say.
Any other questions? Right here.
Spinning tackle. You go out with, for us older people in the crowd who don't want to fly fish all day, you go out with spinning tackle.
You sure can. Yep. MEP spinners, bucktail spinners are great. Any sort of fluke or minnow imitation, unweighted would be good. So jigging paddle, swimming paddle tails, those are all good. Live bait rocks, worms and minnows on a jig hook dominate out there. So yeah, you can be very, very effective with spin gear for sure. Yep. Yep. Great question.
Oh, here in the back.
Uh-oh, not this guy. Ah, geez.
Yeah, I gotta know that one smallmouth that was really, really big.
Yep.
How long was that one?
Which picture? Let's go back in the roll here, Ricky. The one from the snake?
Yeah.
The tributary one?
The really, really.
The really, really
Nope,
big one? This
not that
one?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, next. This one was about 18.
No, it was bigger than that. There it
This
is.
one? Yeah, that was a 20. Yep. That was a 20. Probably 3-pounder. Yep. So this fish was up on the Snake River. There's a 12-mile section from Pine City to the St. Croix. Early season, a lot of those river fish will swim up there to get out of the really fast flooded waters. And a lot of the big boys too. These guys were full. I have a different picture somewhere, but they were just full of crayfish. Their mouth was just all, they were just gorging themselves on crayfish. It was awesome. Yep. There's a lot of these guys out there for sure. Yeah, very cool fish. These fish in this system are probably for sure over 10 years old. If you get a fish over 18 inches, that's a 10-year-old fish or more. Yeah.
Life expectancy.
Ooh, life expectancy of a bass in the St. Croix. I think most of the fish that we catch are like the 10 to 13 inch. Just like trout, we catch a ton of like the 4 to 6 inch fish. Those are our probably 2 to 3-year-old fish. And then we get a sharp decline every next step. I think average is probably 6 years for a wild fish, even trout as well. 6 years is a long time for them. So if we are seeing good year class sizes of young of year fish and good water flows, we can have really strong trophy size fish out there, 8 to 10 years plus years old. Yep. Muskies are kind of the same. They take a really long time to get to big trophy sizes. So in my personal opinion, I'll stand on a soapbox here. The St. Croix has some crazy fishing regs, especially for bass, where the minimum keeping size is 14 inches. So they're keeping the 5-year-old fish and you let go all the little dudes. So you're already taking out all your trophy class fish, and for whatever reason, people do love eating bass. I know, it's crazy. Yep. So I think that does hamper some of our trophy size fish population wise. Thankfully, they do have that catch and release season. There's a short window in September where they have to catch and release, especially above Taylor's Falls. So, yeah. But there's still big ones. Don't let it fool you. Just got to work a little harder.
Are there any questions on Zoom?
Nice.
Question is, please suggest areas that could be wadeable.
Ooh,
St.
that's
Croix.
a great question. Low water, so you're gonna be looking for low water probably mid-July and on. Especially August, September. There are basically near any boat landing on the St. Croix is super wadeable because it's old infrastructure that was used for ferries or homesteads or things like that. There are some really nice gravel bars, sand bars out there. The easiest wading is going to be on that lower river section, especially like Franconia and down from Franconia down to Boom Site. There's going to be a lot of easy gravel bars and sand bars to wade on. Above Taylor's Falls, go to any of those old ferry crossings, Rush City Ferry, Old Railroad Bridge, these are all boat landings. More than anything, just drive around and during low water time, and any shallow spot or rock point will have fish off of it.
Okay, any other questions from the in-house audience? Okay, well, let's give it up again for Evan. Thank you.
So much.
Thanks to all of you for joining us tonight on Memorial Day. Thanks to the Zoom audience for hanging in there with the technical difficulties. We will be sending an email out in the next couple of days with a link to a YouTube video, and we'll also include a copy of Evan's slides. So if you didn't get the camera out in time to take a picture of his favorite flies, you'll be able to read up on those. So anyway, thanks a lot. Hope to see you out on the water, and see you again in September. And support your local guides.